Diana was a sharp, capable lawyer. She and her husband ran their own law firm together. They made it through the toughest startup years as a team. But work and marriage got tangled up, and the resentments piled up over time. Eventually, they got divorced to keep the firm running and pay the bills. Diana had no choice but to keep working alongside her ex-husband. Day in and day out, it was the same petty arguments and soul-crushing routine. There was nothing fresh or new left in her life. Then one evening, a phone call turned her world upside down. The voice on the other end was low and deep. He said he'd found her phone. She'd left it behind at a restaurant. He'd scrolled through her contacts until he found one labeled home, and that's how he reached her. Diana was confused and asked why he hadn't just handed it back to her on the spot if he saw her there. But his answer was surprisingly thoughtful. He said if he'd walked up to return it, she would have just taken the phone and walked away without ever noticing him. By arranging to meet in person instead, they could actually get to know each other, and that was his real goal. His voice was incredibly magnetic, and his humor was sharp but never overbearing. There was a mystery to him, even through the phone, that made Diana let her guard down without even realizing it. They hit it off more and more with every exchange. She could tell he had a breadth of vision and a presence that was far beyond the ordinary. She felt a genuine pull toward him. So when he suggested they meet in person the next day, she didn't hesitate for a second. When the day came, Diana made an extra effort with her appearance. In her mind, a man with such a commanding voice had to look just as impressive. But the moment they actually met face to face, she froze. He was only 4'5". He even had to hop up just to get into his chair at the restaurant. The shock threw Diana completely off balance. Alexander noticed her discomfort right away. But instead of shrinking back in embarrassment, he made a joke about his own height, calm and easygoing. His light-hearted attitude slowly broke the tension. It also shifted how Diana saw him. She decided to give him a real chance and keep talking. And she quickly realized that Alexander was far more remarkable than she'd ever imagined. His knowledge was vast, and his perspective on things completely challenged everything she thought she knew. After some easy conversation, Alexander said he wanted to take her on a one-of-a-kind experience. He made a quick call and arranged a private plane. Diana figured he was just showing off. But sure enough, he actually got her on board that plane. And this wasn't some sightseeing trip. They were going skydiving. The moment she heard that, pure panic set in. She couldn't wrap her head around the fact that this man, judged by the world as too small, would dare take on something so extreme. But Alexander talked her down with endless patience. And then they jumped from 10,000 meters up. During that free fall, every ounce of anxiety and prejudice just fell away. The sheer freedom and exhilaration were like nothing Diana had ever felt. And that one wild experience completely reshaped how she saw Alexander. In that moment, she understood that a person's strength and reliability have nothing to do with their height or appearance. There was a steadiness and gentleness in Alexander that gave her a sense of security she'd never known before. And the way he looked at her, there was a new softness there, something deeper. From then on, they talked more and more often. Whenever something upset her, Diana would call Alexander first. No matter how busy he was, he'd set everything aside and talk her through it with warmth and patience. He invited her out again, saying he wanted to take her somewhere special. That evening, she followed the address to an old factory building. Not exactly a romantic spot. He led her through a maze of hallways until they came to an iron door. When it swung open, the sight completely blew her mind. It was a private, members-only restaurant, beautifully designed with elegance in every detail. Everyone inside seemed to know Alexander and treated him with obvious respect. The two of them chatted easily about life, work, and random stories, nothing like the awkward tension of their first meeting. By then, Diana was genuinely in awe of him. His unique force of character had quietly worked its way into her heart. She kissed him, a deep, honest kiss that said everything, and that sealed the deal between them. But what no one saw was that underneath all that optimism, Alexander had always been deeply lonely. He was a brilliant architect, well-off and wildly talented. But his height made him a target for stares and judgment everywhere he went. His ex-wife had left him too. She couldn't get past his stature and felt he wasn't manly enough. The only comfort he had was his grown son, who stood by him. Still, years of prejudice had left him sensitive beneath the surface, and he'd learned to hide it all behind a cheerful front. Then Diana walked into his life, and suddenly everything started to feel different. After they started dating, the change in Diana was obvious. So obvious that her ex-husband took notice. He began keeping tabs on her. One day when Diana was out with Alexander, her ex spotted them from across the street. Seeing them together, the jealousy and resentment burned hotter than ever. Alexander took Diana to a private dance party with friends. Under the warm, dim lights, they moved together in perfect sync. Most of the other men in the room were tall, and by comparison, Alexander stood out, and not in a way that made him comfortable. He felt self-conscious, afraid of drawing attention and embarrassing Diana. But when he saw her dancing freely, her smile bright and unguarded, he let go of his worries. He broke into a goofy, playful dance that made Diana laugh out loud. In that moment, the stares and the judgment didn't matter. They were the only two people in the room, and everything else faded away. Their connection deepened, and they grew even closer than before. The next morning, Diana woke up to find Alexander already out for work. But he'd left her a thoughtful breakfast. While getting ready, though, she accidentally kicked over a small step stool he used around the house. For just a second, a flicker of doubt crossed her mind. She knew she didn't care about his height, but the world's judgment and other people's eyes still tugged at her, whether she liked it or not. Even her assistant seemed to sense something between her and Alexander. Still, Diana brushed it off and said they were just friends. She respected his character and abilities completely, but her pride held her back, and she couldn't bring herself to go public with a relationship the world would judge. Not long after, while she was working with her ex-husband, he took a nasty swipe at her. He compared her and Alexander to Snow White and one of the dwarfs, mocking her for dating a little person. Diana knew he was being shallow and cruel, but it still got under her skin, and she warned him to never talk about Alexander that way again. One day, Diana wanted to buy Alexander a gift, a nice shirt, but she looked through every menswear store in town and couldn't find a size that would fit him. Frustrated, she ended up in a kid's clothing shop. The owner assumed she was shopping for her son and recommended a sweater for a 10-year-old. Diana didn't correct her and bought it anyway. When Alexander opened the gift, he was deeply moved, living his whole life under other people's judgments. He rarely received gifts that came from the heart. That small gesture meant the world to him. Diana decided to bring Alexander to an art gallery reception and formally introduce him to her mother and stepfather. At the event, she was nervous and careful, keeping him close. But Alexander had a natural charm and quickly won over the older crowd. Then, during dinner, her mother brought up his height out of nowhere. The blunt comment landed like a slap. Guests nearby snickered and shot them amused, mocking glances. Diana was furious. She quickly changed the subject and even called out the guests who'd been laughing, defending Alexander's dignity. When he stepped away to take a call, Diana's mother pressed her about their relationship. Flustered, Diana lied and said Alexander was just a client. Her mother didn't catch on and made a casual crack about how hard life must be for him, implying he had to suck up to people just to get by. Those words stung Diana like a knife. She spent the rest of the night on edge, worried about how others saw Alexander, and terrified of how they saw the two of them together. Later, Diana dropped all pretense and admitted her internal struggle. She truly loved Alexander. She didn't care about his height, but the world's judgment, other people's snickers, and her family's disapproval weighed on her heavily. Alexander didn't blame her. He understood how heavy that kind of pressure could be, and he saw how torn she was. So he chose to be patient and wait, giving her space to make peace with it on her own terms. Some time passed, and Diana finally decided to come clean about their relationship. She told her mother she was seeing someone seriously. At first, her mother was thrilled and drilled her about his background. But the moment Diana said it was Alexander, her mother went pale. She couldn't accept her daughter being with a man that short. Distraught, she spaced out while driving and nearly slammed head-on into a bus. That near accident drove a wedge between mother and daughter, and it made the obstacles standing between Diana and Alexander feel even heavier. The breaking point came during a date by the ocean. Alexander was wearing the kid's sweater Diana had given him as they walked along the beach. While he went to grab ice cream, Diana ran into the owner of the children's store, the same one who'd sold her the sweater. The owner cheerfully mentioned that the sweater fit her 10-year-old son perfectly. Alexander overheard the whole thing as he walked back, and in that instant, everything clicked. He realized that Diana had been carrying all the weight of this relationship alone. The stares, the family opposition, the shame of keeping it hidden, the constant tug-of-war with her own pride. He'd always thought he was the one bearing the brunt of the world's judgment, but now he saw the truth. His very existence was trapping her in a loop of doubt and pain. After a lot of thought, Alexander made the painful choice to let her go. It wasn't because he didn't love her. It was because he loved her too much to be the anchor that held her back from the world. He couldn't stand watching her get torn apart between love and society's expectations. So gently, he told her to go home, and he ended it. A relationship full of what-ifs and might-have-beens. Diana didn't fight it. She just turned and walked away. A sudden downpour matched the chaos inside her. She'd always leaned on Alexander's warmth and devotion, but she never had the courage to stand beside him against the world. In the end, she was the one who ran. And Alexander saw clearly that love wasn't always about holding on sometimes. Letting go was its own kind of grace. But after the breakup, Alexander sank into a dark spiral of self-doubt. He asked his grown son how he really felt about his dad's height. His son's answer was surprisingly healing. He told his father that all his life, even when people made fun of him, his dad had always stood tall, never ashamed, always dignified. He said his father was his greatest pride, Those words soothed something deep in Alexander's wounded heart. Meanwhile, Diana's world went dull and gray without him. The insults and gossip stopped, but so did the love of the one person who'd truly seen her. In the bland, empty days that followed, she finally woke up to what she really wanted. It was never a perfect partner by the world's standards. It was something pure and real, a soul that fit with hers. She realized that inner peace and real happiness mattered more than anyone else's opinion. When she poured her heart out to her assistant, the assistant didn't sugarcoat it. She told Diana that the real smallness wasn't Alexander's height, it was Diana's own mind. She had a normal body, but when it came to love, she was the one who'd been stunted. She'd let the world's judgment trap her heart and lost something precious because of it. Just as Diana was drowning in regret, her mother had a change of heart too. She finally understood that her daughter's happiness mattered so much more than what anyone else thought. If Diana was happy, that was all that should count. Her mother encouraged her to let go of her fears, go after what she wanted, and stop caring about outside opinions. And Diana, finally free from all that weight, made a bold move. She got on the same plane she jumped from with Alexander before. She wanted to use that same leap to face her fears head-on and make up for the past. As the plane flew over the building Alexander had designed, she jumped without hesitation. Wind roared past her, and the gut-dropping freefall took over. But through it all, only one thought consumed her. She was going to cross every barrier and win back the love she'd let slip away. She called his name over and over in the air, chasing this one shot at redemption. She landed right on the roof of the building Alexander was about to inspect. When he showed up with his crew to check on the site, he found Diana there, disheveled, bruised, but fearless. His staff, catching the hint, cleared out and left them alone. Face to face with the man she'd never stopped loving, Diana poured her heart out. She told him she'd finally let go of all the fear. She didn't care about the stares or the whispers anymore. She was ready to leave it all behind and stand beside him, openly and fully, for the rest of her life. She knew that love was her own choice, and her own happiness wasn't up for public debate. When Alexander heard her honest confession, the light came back into his eyes. He understood just how much courage it took for her to make that leap, and he saw that she was truly willing to throw away every outside judgment just to be with him. At that moment, Alexander knew without a doubt he would spend the rest of his life with this woman who'd come running back to him. The love we spend our whole lives searching for isn't some picture-perfect fantasy that checks every box. It's someone who connects with your soul, who heals you and accepts you exactly as you are. So many people judge others by shallow things like height or looks, forgetting that what's outside never defines what's inside. Real strength and gentleness live in a person's character and heart. Alexander may have been short in stature, but he had a wisdom and ease that few people ever achieve. His quiet inner strength carried their entire relationship. And Diana's journey taught us that the biggest obstacle to love isn't circumstance. It's our own fear and the weight of what others think. Too often, we let the world's standards and other people's opinions push us away from something real and beautiful. But real love doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. It doesn't cater to prejudice or demand compromise. All it takes is two people showing up for each other, honest, brave, and willing to embrace each other's flaws. That's how you break every chain and hold on to the one kind of happiness that truly matters.